So first I wanted to speak about the Marcy's absolute theory of government just a bit. I think everybody probably understands the principles very well, but I'll breeze through them just to give a context to the discussion of the Ramayana. But for a wholeness, I wanted to quote from one of Maharishi's talks in 1991 on Victory Day. It was when he really started speaking about the Ramayana in earnestness. And he gave this beautiful lecture when everyone was inaugurating the land that is now Maharishi Vedic City. There are many dignitaries. There was a big tent. There was a huge thunderstorm in the middle of it, which Maharishi spoke to. And Maharishi spoke out of the blue about the Ramayana. He went on and on about it. And one of the things he said, and if you don't mind, I'll read it's just easier for me to read it as well, even though usually you don't read from your own slides. And this is kind of a wholeness. And Maharishi said, in order to be a successful manager or an administrator, whatever you may call it, in order to be the administrator on the supreme level of ability, who will be able to handle all possible activities successfully, reading of Ramayana, living the Ramayana, having assimilated all the principles of the Ramayana in one's own awareness will make anyone that supreme level of administrators. And note that he didn't say in the last sentence that it would make you understand the supreme level of administration. He said you would be a supreme level of administrators, that just studying and knowing and assimilating the principles and assimilating the beautiful expressions of consciousness within it would enliven consciousness to such an extent that you would become an ideal administrator. Now, for Maharishi's absolute theory of government, it's really the same for administration and government, but Maharishi liked to talk about the Ramayana in the context of government. And he made a very beautiful expression in 1993, I believe it was, when he called the demonstration project in Washington, D.C., and he spoke about the effect of our group on the government. And it's kind of a wholeness in itself. I believe this is the day that I got married, was the day that he called this in, so I always remember it fondly. But he said, again, I'll read it, everyone knows if you want to accomplish something, you engage an expert. And if you are fortunate enough to engage a good expert, you relax. The expert accomplishes everything that you want. Now, a government need only engage the expert government. Engage that administrator who has been demonstrating success in administration for millions of years in the past, ever since the dawn of the solar system and galactic universe. The government of the universe has been demonstrating its ability to administer the whole diversity of the universe with order and perfect peace and without a problem ever. It's a great theory. If we could engage the government of the universe, then all our problems would become nothing, because that level of intelligence could solve anything for us at any time. But the question is, how do you engage the government of the universe? How can you apply that to what's going on in Washington today, or Beijing, or Moscow? How do you apply the government of the universe to that? And there's a very specific logic that Maharishi uses to describe it. And the first is that there's a phenomenon known as collective consciousness. I think we all know that very well. Collective consciousness is the sum of the consciousness of all the individuals within a group. If you have a family, then the consciousness of each individual in the family contributes to the family consciousness. If you live in a state, we all do, if you live in a country, if you live in the world and the universe, then your individual consciousness helps create a collective consciousness for that entity. We work in a department. I work in the Department of Maharishi Vedic Science, and we have a collective consciousness. And that collective consciousness is formed by the individuals within it. So that's one step. But then there's a very, very important step, and that is there's a reciprocal relationship between the individual and the collective consciousness. And what that means is that if my consciousness grows, then it affects the entire collective consciousness. And as the collective consciousness grows, that reciprocates on all the individuals. So if you're in a family and you have 7 brothers and sisters and 2 parents, and you're the only person practicing TM, then you grow and the collective consciousness grows of the family. And then the collective consciousness influences everybody else in the group. Even if they're not meditating, even if they don't know that transcendental meditation exists, even if they don't know anything, that reciprocal relationship means that the collective consciousness raises the consciousness of every individual in the group. So that's the next step. The next is that governments, and in particularly their heads of states, are the pure and innocent mirror of collective consciousness, faithfully reflecting whatever is presented to it. What that means is that when, in this country, when Joe Biden is sitting in his office making decisions for the whole country, all he is doing is reflecting the collective consciousness of the nation. He's not acting as an individual. When he goes back to the personal quarters of the president, then he's an individual and he acts on the basis of his own thoughts and feelings and education and all of that. But when he's sitting at the desk, he's mirroring the collective consciousness of the nation. And when you have a very diverse collective consciousness like we do in this country, then you have very diverse inputs. So the way we improve our government is by raising the nation's collective consciousness. If we can make the collective consciousness more lively in the qualities of natural law, if we can raise the quality and the refinement of the collective consciousness, then the leaders of the country will automatically improve in their decision-making and in what they do. It's a very important point because Maharishi emphasizes it over and over, and that is that you can't complain against your government. Your government just simply mirrors the collective consciousness. That's all that it can do. There is one caveat to that, and Maharishi mentioned this. Actually, I'm going to go to the next point. He mentioned this in one lecture, and I never heard him mention it again. It's an obscure point. Not everybody's familiar with it, but it's very interesting. He said, there's something in the quality of the mirror that determines how the head of government or how the government reflects in the collective consciousness. And he said, if you have a dusty mirror, then it will reflect the dusty aspect of collective consciousness. If you have a pure, refined mirror, then it will reflect the more refined values. What that means is, if you have a president of the United States or a prime minister of England or whatever it's called, a king of some other country, if they are of a very refined quality of nervous system, refined level of consciousness, then they will also be an innocent mirror, but they will tend to reflect those more refined qualities of the collective consciousness. If you have a really, an individual as the head of the government who is a great violator of natural law, then he or she will reflect those qualities of the collective consciousness. And that's why people used to ask in the natural law parties, ask Maharishi, well, can John Hagelin really reflect the collective consciousness of the nation? And Maharishi would say, yes, absolutely. He can reflect the quality of the nation, because the quality of the person who's doing the reflecting will determine to a great extent what decisions are made. So that's why you want to have a very refined person in the government.